Hello and welcome to Coderific. In this video, you will learn how to select a specific number of frames from a video in Python. Remember that every problem has more than one programming solutions, and this video is about one of those. What is frames per second in a video? Frames per second is actually represent the speed at which those images are displayed. For example, the video has 25 frames per second and the duration of this video is 8 seconds. So if we want to calculate the total number of frames, we can do that if we know the duration and the frames per second of video. But if you do not know the total number of frames, you can simply divide by duration, so you can simply have the frames per second amount. So by knowing these two values, we can always get the total number of frames by multiplying the duration and frames per second rate, and this way we get the total number of frames for a specific video. Sometimes it is impossible to process huge number of frames at one time in a limited memory. So the solution for such a problem is downsampling, or have a selected number of frames from a video. So in this video, the algorithm that I am going to share with you is working as follows. So basically the idea is, if you know the total number of frames and duration of video, we can divide simply the number of frames by duration so that we can get chunks of seconds with equal number of frames in them, as it is shown in the diagram below. Once we have chunks, then we can select random frames from each chunk. So most of the program is similar to what we did in our previous video. If you haven't watched that video, I will put a link in the description so that you can watch it. And basically in previous video we saw how we can read the video frames, and how we can write the frames as two-dimensional images in another directory. So in this video, for this program, to solve the issue of downsampling, basically we have imported two new libraries that we did use in our previous video. These are in random and shuttle. So random we will be using for creating the chunks, and shuttle library will help us to move frames from one directory to another. So basically we have kept similar the input variables and the output variables. The paths are same, but as you can see here in my files window, there is one new directory. It's called temp. I have created this directory to hold all of the frames temporarily, and from those frames I will select based on my algorithm. Since we have created the temp directory, we need to mention it by specializing or initializing a variable to path for it. Temp. For example, I am not processing one video. Instead, I am working on multiple videos and I am using the same temp. Then I will need to empty this folder every time I iterate from one video to another. So before even I begin processing the video frames, I need to make sure that the temporary directory is empty. To do that, I have used library operating system OS, and to empty that I have created a for loop first, which is reading file by file in my temporary directory, and I am taking this file indexes to another function that is called os.unlink, and that is used to delete that file. So I will also emptying the temporary directory at the end of the program. I am going to write a function. It will help me choose selected number of frames from each chunk of second of video. So my function name is generate array of selected. First I need to create a variable that will tell me how many frames do I need to choose from each chunk of second. Here I have kept this fps variable constant, but if you want you can also make it dynamic and pass through a function to have a variety of fps for each video, but for now in this video I am using this constant. So the next thing I am going to have is the list of total number of frames. Okay, the number of frames will come through the function call, and once I have created a list of total number of frames, then I am going to create a number of chunks. So I am basically going to divide total number of frames with seconds. If I add a double slash, it will return an integer, but since I have already declared it, the output must be in integer format, so I don't need to add a double slash here. Next, now I have created my chunks by dividing the total number of array or total number of frames by the duration, and the next I am going to create chunks with equal value of equal number of frames in each chunk. How I can do that? By simply creating an array. I'm going to index from it such as I start from I to I plus n, and I am where is coming I from is this loop. So basically now I am passing the length of array. It will be used as total number of frames. So in this line is basically creating a chunk, and starting from, for example, if we have 200 frames, it will generate a list starting from 0 to 199, and each chunk will have equal number of these indices. Okay, now to store my new array, which will be actually a selected number of frames in the form of indices, I am going to create a loop to iterate through each element in my chunks. So first I am checking if the length of chunk is less than or equal to 1, then I don't need to choose. I will simply append this to my array1 array ch of 0. But if the length is larger than 1, then I'm going to choose. So basically I'm choosing randomly. It doesn't matter, we at the end, once we have all the selected indices, we will sort the list and then we will be in a correct sequence. So from elements of chunk, choose fps, and here I have used 2, so in each chunk from its elements 2 values or two elements will be selected randomly. And now because I have choose my elements from each chunk, then I'm going to run a loop over these elements so that I can append it to array 1. Array 1 I. So I is basically each element from this list, the selected number of indices. Okay, now I have created, or I have selected my indices out of loop. I am going to sort it. I am going to sort the array 1. Alright, now we are ready to return array 1. So here basically it is saying that now we are good to go. Now we have defined our function. It's time to call it. So for now we are in this line we are having an error that list directory is undefined. So I forgot to import that directory. I forgot to import that library. Now we are good to go. Next we are going to call our function that we just created here. So this is basically our function, and we are passing this function a total number of frames that we just extracted from our temp directory. In previous program we were saving our frames in a directory called frames, but in this program we will not be saving our frames in the frame directory, but we will be saving in the temporary directory, and the actual directory will be having the frames, those frames that we just select using our algorithm. So first, based on that, we need to change our path from the actual frames directory to our temporary directory. So now the temporary directory is concatenated with the name of frames as we have created in this line, and this name is basically a concatenation of video name with the number of frame that is controlled by the count variable. We are going to remove this variable because we are not writing it here, but instead we want to write a CSV that will hold our selected number of frames. But if you want, you can also create CSV here that will contain list of all number of frames. But another loop that we are going to run over selected indices to choose frames from temporary directory. You can also create another CSV that will contain the selected number of frames. After writing this, we want to see how or what number of indices are selected from our algorithm. So we are going to print the information which will print the length of selected indices. Here we have called the function to get the selected number of indices, and the next thing we need to do to run a loop over these selected indices so that we can select the frames from temporary directory and move them to another directory. The next thing we need to do is to create a loop to iterate through the selected number of indices that we just obtained by calling the algorithm or function that we just created. So now the TQDM is taking the control over for loop so that we can know the progress over each frame. And first we are taking the indices, and remember that the selected indices contain the list of indices, so our entire frame listing is inside the frames temp directory, and we are indexing it by these indices from selected indexes variable. Okay, one by one we get each frame index, and we are going to concatenate it with temporary directory, and then we are generating a final output to move that selected frame. And we are using shuttle.copy2 function to simply move the frame. So this moving is not a cut paste, but it is a copy paste. So each frame will be copied and pasted to the destination final directory. And here, as you can see, in this project I have removed the output variable from the loop above, and I put it here so that I can write the selected number of frames in my CSV instead of all number of frames. And at the end, similar, we have first we have created a data frame object by passing our output variable. This is actually a format of dictionary, and in the next line we create CSV by calling tool underscore CSV function, and our CSV is comma separated, but if you want you can also use semicolon. Here I am keeping it as it is. So now we have completed writing the code. Now let's run it. So my program has begun to run. It has started writing the frames to temporary directory first, and as you can see we also know that our input video has a dimension of 200 frames. As you can see, the simulation is complete. Now we have successfully run all of the frames, and then we move the selected number of frames from the temporary directory. Another thing I forgot to mention that after you finish the loop, you can also copy paste the line where you empty the temporary directory if you don't want to keep any space unnecessarily occupied. This is it for this video. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, do like and share. Also subscribe the channel and hit the bell icon so that you get notified whenever I upload a new video. If you have any suggestion, leave them in comment section. Thank you.